In this video, we're going to talk about scripts, pseudocode, and just go over the prior lesson real quickly. So scripts are basically a series of instructions that the computer does to run your program. A scripting language is something like JavaScript or Python, and these are languages that are basically the brains of the computer and the brains of your application. It's a little different from a markup language. Markup language is HTML or CSS, and these are things that just make your website look pretty. It shows data, and the markup language works with the scripting language or vice versa to basically get user info, show it, and then do something with it. So the JavaScript is what is the brains and it does stuff. HTML and CSS are just what the user actually sees. So that's just basically some vocab that's important to know. The second thing that we're going to talk about is pseudocode. So pseudocode is just the plain English version of what it is that your program is going to do. So this is super helpful in any coding project, both in the beginning and the end. So in the beginning of the project, it's helpful just so that you can outline what it is that your code is going to do, and then you can actually just go through and quickly code based off of what the pseudocode says. And then once you're done with the project, it's also really helpful because that pseudocode can then just be used as comments so that later on down the line, if you forget what your code does, you can just read the pseudocode, which is now comments, and quickly get a recap of whatever it is. It's also helpful if you're working on group projects and you have other coders that are trying to figure out what it is that your code does. The pseudocode will basically tell them that. So the below is an example of a program that gets customers' IDs and checks to see if they're 21. So you can just read this here, but basically you just write out what's the code going to do, and then later on you'll actually program it. Then just a quick reminder of some of the things that we learned in the prior lesson. So the first thing is just the double backspace, which indicates a comment. So when you're actually writing code, the pseudocode will basically be in all comments. So that's important to know. To send the user a message in a web browser, you can use the alert function. To get input from the user, you can use the prompt function. Console.log is just for basically debugging so that you can send information to the console. The user will never see this information, but when you go in and click the Google Inspector tool, you can go to console, and anything you put in the console log will then show up here. So this is really helpful for debugging. The next one is the parse int. This takes a string and turns it into a number, and then the math.floor and the math.random are used for random number generators.